What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Ben on Sports. And as you can tell, this is going to be a basketball episode. I told you last week I had an NBA episode coming, and it is here. This is not a college basketball episode. For those of you wondering, because we have done more college episodes than the NBA, but this is our NBA post-trade deadline special. I was thinking about doing an NBA episode 2 weeks ago, and I said, let's just wait for the trade deadline. And boy, has there been some fireworks. I want to talk about the NBA trade deadline, talk about some of the big trades, and then give an update on where the standings are, how I see them finishing out the playoff bracket as I see it, and so forth and so on. It's going to be similar to the preseason outlook that I did in October. We're just going to have an extra slide talking about trades, all right? So let's get it underway and talk about the biggest trades in my eyes from the deadline. I singled out 7 here. Obviously, the biggest one, the one everybody's talking about, the one that's the most shocking from the deadline, Mavericks trading Luka Doncic to the Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a first-round pick. I know there was some other stuff in this, but for some of these trades, I just want to talk about the important stuff. I don't need to talk about every single small thing or whatever, right? Like, I know that the Jazz were technically involved in this trade, but the Jazz's piece really doesn't matter that much to me. What matters here is that we have two franchises that got fundamentally altered by a massive trade. First, I'm going to talk about what Luka and the Lakers, because I have a little bit more to say to the Mavericks and about the Mavericks. Lakers, great job getting this trade done. Not only have you gotten somebody who maybe isn't at a position of need, wasn't a position of need coming in, but is now arguably the best player on your team and somebody that can carry your franchise for the next 10 to 12 years after LeBron James retires, one of the biggest stars in the world, one of the best players in Luka Doncic. Kudos to the Lakers for making that happen and getting Luka Doncic back. It sucks to see Anthony Davis go, especially because that's a position of need. But we're going to touch on that very statement here with another trade. Phenomenal trade by the Lakers. The only thing that concerns me is, how do Luka and LeBron fit next to each other? They're both, LeBron's 6'8", Luka's 6'7". They both like to have the ball in their hands a little bit, although I will say I think LeBron and needing the ball in his hands, as he's getting older and his career's changing, I think some of that's moving a little bit. And LeBron has very high basketball IQ, and I think he can morph his style of play to whatever it needs to be. I definitely think I'm expecting Luka Doncic to remain somebody that has the ball in his hands a lot. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they stagger their minutes. I mean, if you can work it out where 48 minutes a game, right? In NBA games, 48 minutes, you have either Luka Doncic or LeBron James on the floor. Obviously, there's going to be quite a bit of overlap, but you'll take it when those are the two guys leading whatever group out there, because both of those guys have proven that they can lift maybe some inferior supporting cast to compete with some really good teams. So as long as they figure it out, as long as LeBron and Luka figure it out, which I think they will, they're both smart basketball players. They both appreciate each other's game a lot. I trust that they'll do it. But as long as they get that figured out, they're going to be really dangerous on the court at the same time. Now, if you're the Mavericks, first I want to say Anthony Davis, great player, although does have some injury concern, which is kind of funny because the Mavericks said that's part of the reason why they traded Luka. And really, in the short term, is the Mavericks team worse? Yes. I mean, if we're honest, this team was largely built around Luka Doncic, and after they made a run to the NBA Finals last year and trying to build a team around him. However, the team isn't in awful shape. I mean, your best two players are Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis, right? Like, that's a pretty good duo. Definitely offensively, Anthony Davis is going to improve your defense. He's a better defensive player than Luka Doncic. You still have the carcass of Klay Thompson if Klay Thompson ever can figure it out. And you still have guys like PJ Washington and Derek Lively, some exciting pieces. So it's not like it's all doom and gloom, but their team got worse. And Anthony Davis has a lot less time left in the league than Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic was going to be one of the faces of the league, arguably the face of the league, in just a short 2 or 3 years. And you threw that all away. And secondly, not only did you throw that away, but this is the return you got. There's much teams with much worse players who made trades that got more back than what they did for Luka Doncic. Now, nobody got an Anthony Davis back, but I still think there's a lot of better hauls out there. Third, if you're the Mavericks, I don't know. Nobody really knows what was going on inside the building about Luka not being fit, Luka being overweight. Nobody knows that except the Mavericks, the Luka, and maybe the training staff, right? Do I think some of it was maybe out of proportion? Yeah, I do, maybe a little. And even so, if Luka wants to be 270, if he's going out there and averaging 38 and 8 every night, I think you have to put up with it. And if it's the owner is cheap, I think you have to. I would rather you just come out and say it. But let's play the game. Luka Doncic is overweight. You can't. You don't feel comfortable paying all this stuff. And again, I'm still not so sure I believe in all that. There might be some behind the scenes things going on between the two GMs. Why are the Lakers the only team you talk? Luka Doncic is probably the second most valued player in the NBA right now. Obviously, Wembanyama might be first, but if you're starting a franchise from scratch and you're looking at talented players, their age, how long you can have them, how popular they are globally, I think it's Victor Wembanyama and Luka Doncic. So if you're going to make this trade, I think every single team in the NBA would want Luka Doncic. That's not a crazy thing to say. Apparently the Mavericks don't. Why are the Lakers the only team you shop him to? If you're going to trade Luka, and maybe they wanted to keep it quiet, right? So it shocked everybody, but still, it is malpractice not to at least get a bidding war between two teams. Right? Like Luka Doncic, you could argue the value of him is 4 or 5 first-round picks, maybe more. Maybe it's 2 great young stud prospects and a first-round pick or 2. The fact that you just called the Lakers and reportedly, I'm saying reportedly, I think it's confirmed by this point, but reportedly got talked down from a higher offer is absolutely ridiculous and malpractice in this situation. And quite frankly, the Mavericks GM, who I don't even want to speak his name, if he doesn't win the Mavericks an NBA championship in the aftermath of this trade, he needs to be fired and never hired again in a basket by any front office. That's how bad this trade could be. I think Luka Doncic is one of the most liked players in the league, and now that he's in Lakers purple and gold, he might have the greatest heel turn in NBA history. He might be one of the most hated players in the NBA. I spent a lot of time on that trade just because it was so out of nowhere and because it is so shocking, and I needed to let the Mavericks know how I felt about it. I'm not going to spend that much time on the rest of these. So, moving on. Jimmy Butler to the Warriors. This is a 5-team trade. I'm only going to mention the Heat and the Warriors pieces that they're getting in this because I think those are the most substantial. If you want the whole 5-team trade thing, you can literally find it anywhere. It's on every reputable sporting page, and it's all over Twitter. Jimmy Butler and the Heat saga finally end. No matter how bad the Heat wanted to keep Butler, Butler finally left, even if the Warriors weren't his preferred destination. Can playoff Jimmy bring back the playoff Jimmy from the Heat that was so magical and took them to multiple NBA finals, made multiple deep runs? Can playoff Jimmy Butler from the bubble come to the Warriors and make the Warriors even better? Maybe. Those days could be behind them, but the Warriors have to make the playoffs first, and Jimmy Butler is an incredible player, but he's hasn't played really in a while, hasn't played big minutes, and the Warriors gave up quite a few important pieces of guys who were playing every day and playing a lot of minutes, and they have to gel really quickly because right now they're not even in the play-in. if the play-in and playoffs started today. They're not even in the play-in. So they have a lot of ground to make up to even make the playoffs. And can Jimmy Butler be the difference with everything they lost? I don't know. But I certainly wouldn't want to be the team that has to play Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green, especially if playoff Jimmy is back. And they could be a 7 or 8 seed looking up at one of the best teams in the league. So I definitely find that interesting and something to watch. Meanwhile, the Heat are getting back a pretty good return. Kyle Anderson, Davion Mitchell, Andrew Wiggins, and a first round pick, right? Who knows what the pick turns into? The Heat, you know how the Heat are. They don't like to rebuild. They like to retool and always try and stay competitive. And I respect them for that a lot. Kyle Anderson, Mr. Slow-Mo. I think he's a typical Heat guy, right? He plays good defense. You know, maybe he doesn't have some of the athleticism of other guys, but he plays good defense, scores when he has the ability to, right? Knows his role, and he's got a little bit of chippiness, a little bit of that fire in him that you need to play the Heat style. Davion Mitchell, I think, was bred in a lab to play for the Heat and play with Heat culture. He has grittiness. He's able to shoot a little bit. He's in your face. He's athletic. He's one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA who's only going to get better. And now I think he's going to have more of an opportunity than he's ever had in his career. You have Andrew Wiggins, a guy who's won a title with the Warriors, knows what it takes. He's still a pretty good two-way player. If you're the Heat, all you need is Andrew Wiggins to give you 16 to 20 a game, right? That upper teens range, what he is more than capable of doing and has been his whole career, and continue to play good defense as a 3-4. And I think you're happy, and you could end up, right? The absence of, Jimmy Butler has been playing for the Heat, and they get back 3 pretty good pieces that they can put into their lineup, all with experience, all I think complementary to the Heat culture. The Heat could get much better, and they're already in the playoffs. If they gel quick enough, they could be very formidable. And then they have a first round pick. Maybe they deal it. Maybe they pick somebody with it. We'll see what happens, but a first round pick is not something tangible that I can see on the floor yet. Third biggest trade to me, the 3-team trade. I'm not listing everything that's involved because there's a lot of picks involved. There's a lot of players involved between the Spurs, the Kings, and the Bulls. The important thing is that Chicago sends Zach LaVine to Sacramento, and Sacramento sends De'Aaron Fox to San Antonio. This helps the Bulls rebuild. I think the Bulls just forever, I don't feel like, are self-aware of where they have been. This feels like the most self-aware move the Bulls have had in a long time. San Antonio, Fox is still pretty young, right? He still has quite a few good years left. And it's funny because you're saying like he's old compared to most of the San Antonio team. I don't know what it does to Chris Paul. Chris Paul might be close to retirement. He's definitely in the twilight years of his career. I think the game has passed him by a little bit. I think he's still incredibly smart and very cerebral about the game of basketball. But I think his size and athleticism is making him is forcing him to get pushed out of the game with how much size and athleticism is in it. But De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle, that's a heck of a backcourt. I think Fox is a good defender, and he's going to fit in nicely with Victor Wembanyama. I certainly wouldn't want to see Wembanyama and Fox in the pick and roll with Fox's speed and finishing ability. And, Wembanyama is Wembanyama. LaVine to the Kings. I feel like the Kings are almost trying what the Bulls did. They have DeMar DeRozan. They have Zach LaVine. And they have a European big that's pretty skilled, although I think Valanciunas I would rather have than Vucevic, just because Valanciunas is a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical and tougher. They also have Sabonis, right? So, but it's like the Kings are almost trying what the Bulls did. I like a lot of what the Kings did. And now I'm going to kind of bring in this fourth element now that we're to the Kings. This where they got Valanciunas. I think it makes the Kings better. I still think that's a lot of moving pieces to try and figure out and gel. And I don't know if there's enough time to gel this season. And honestly, the Kings right now are kind of more of a play-in team, even with these moves, in my opinion, than they are an actual contender. There's so many teams in the West. There's so many good teams in the West. I don't know if I see this Kings team making it. but they definitely could, and I believe a lot of these guys are under contract for next year, so that could also be good. Where you take the rest of this year, if you make the playoffs, great, but next year you come in the training camp, you know who you have, time to keep building chemistry. I've talked about fourth. Like I said, I just talked about Valanciunas. Let's get to five, kind of an underrated trade that I think is going to work out for both sides, which is very rare. Lakers, oh, we needed a center, so we traded away Anthony Davis, and now we really, really need a center. Who can we get rid of? Well, now that we have Doncic, Dalton Necht isn't as important, and Cam Reddish is Cam Reddish, right? We also have these two first round. We also have a first round pick and a swap. Why don't we give it all for one of a young center having a career year in Mark Williams? That's exactly what they did. The Hornets give up Mark Williams, who's pretty much a walking double double, averaging like 16 and 10, both career highs for him. I also think with his athleticism, he can be a great defensive paint presence for the Lakers, helping shore up the inside. They needed a center even with Anthony Davis, I think, and now they got a center and they don't have Anthony Davis. It's a great get for the Lakers. They did give up a lot, and maybe the first round picks hurt you, but Necht and Reddish are, you could argue, are much less important with the Doncic trade. And if you're the Hornets, you get two extra first round picks. Dalton Necht, who has shown flashes of being a really, really good rookie, and you have Cam Reddish, who, I mean, probably won't be on the team very long for the Hornets, but they got a lot of nice pieces for Mark Williams, somebody who is a good young player, but still probably not in their timeline. I think this is, like I said, I think this is a trade that could work out for both sides. It's a win now move by the Lakers, and it is a great future move for the Hornets. 6 point here, and you can see for 6 and 7, I have a question mark, and it's because I have no idea why at least one of these teams did the deal. Raptors trading for Brandon Ingram, and they gave up Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, a first rounder, and a second rounder for Brandon Ingram. Ingram is a great player, and this is probably around where his value is. But if you're the Raptors, you're on pace to maybe win 30 games. Probably not. You're on pace to be in the 20s most likely win-wise and be top 5 lottery odds. Why are you trading for Brandon Ingram? Like, he's an older vet player. It would be different if he was like 20, in that 24 to 27 range, and the Pelicans are ready to blow it up, and you're just like, well, maybe this could be our duo with Scotty Barnes or any one of their young guys. But it's not the case. Ingram is older. He's owed a lot of money. So if you're a young team, you lose cap flexibility and you give up future assets for a veteran player. That's moves that only championship contenders are looking at. If you're the Pelicans, it makes sense and definitely helps you free up your salary. Brown and Olynyk aren't really of any interest to the Pelicans getting shipped away, but a first rounder and a second rounder, you'll take that for Brandon Ingram. You get salary relief, you get some draft picks. And the Pelicans, who have severely underperformed for a variety of reasons, all of a sudden, maybe they have a little bit more hope for the future now. I don't get this trade if you're the Raptors. The Pelicans, it was rumored they're going to be trading Brandon Ingram, and I'm surprised that another contending team didn't come in with a better offer. I'm shocked the Raptors did, but maybe the Raptors make a run at the play-in game, but they're not going to beat any of the top teams. Maybe they're building something for next year, and none of us are and I'm not privy to it, and most people don't see it either. And then another questionable trade for the Bucks, in my mind, it's kind of makes sense for the Wizards. I guess it makes sense for the Wizards. They pick up a first rounder. But the Bucks, essentially the highlight of this deal is Middleton, giving up Middleton, who has had a lot of injury concerns, hasn't been himself since they won the title, for Kyle Kuzma. And yeah, you get younger, but do you get better, right? And you're giving up a first round pick, an asset that could have been used to get somebody else. And I think in some ways this hurts the Bucks because they could have helped use Middleton in that first round pick to get a third star to go with Lillard and Antetokounmpo. But now they can't. Kuzma's taking up the salary and they don't have the first round pick. And they're like, oh, well, maybe Kuzma's performing really well. Well, he's having one of the worst shooting seasons of his career. He's still not bad. He's still scoring the ball for the Wizards. And now he'll be, a third, fourth option? but he's not great defensively. And I would argue the Bucks need a defensive stopper more than anything else. It's like they went out and got a second Bobby Portis. You could argue Bobby Portis is better than Kyle Kuzma. And I just don't see where this fits in with the Bucks team. Maybe, and again, I reserve the right to be wrong, obviously. I'm sure people will have no problem calling me out on that, but where I just, maybe if Kyle Kuzma returns to what he was what he did with the Wizards the last 2 or so years or before this season, he can be an 18 to 20 point per game guy, help shoot some threes, get the 3-point percentage. I don't know if he'll ever be a 40% guy, but get it up from 33 to like 36, right? Like 37, even that'll be helpful and help spread the floor. I still think the Bucks needed a defensive stopper, but I digress. If you're the Wizards, you pick up some picks, you pick up they're not going to keep Middleton. You're just taking on a salary. Maybe Johnson is a long-term piece. Maybe you think you can develop him. If you're the Wizards, though, you get Kuzma's long-term cap after that new extension off the books. And that's and a first-round pick. And that's the most important thing if you are the Wizards. Again, don't understand that from the Bucks perspective, but maybe they see something that I don't. They are the ones getting paid to make these trades. I am simply observing. Those are the 7 biggest trades at the deadline. There was tons of other moves. There's a lot of player movement, a lot of pick movement, a lot of salary management trades at the deadline. And you can find those anywhere, ESPN, Twitter, anywhere you trust news sources, you can find it there. Now I'm going to move on to looking at current records and where I see teams finishing up. I'm going to start off with the Southeast Division. Remember, when I'm talking about NBA divisions, they really don't matter a whole lot anymore, but it's nice to just do like a little group of 5 teams at a time. I actually appreciate that divisions aren't as important in the NBA the way and in the way that it's structured, and that but I digress. We're going to just do it division by division. There's 6 divisions, 5 teams each. Let's get into it. The current standings, Heat, even with all the drama with Jimmy Butler, they are still first place, and it's probably because this is the worst division in the NBA. You see the Heat, only team with a winning record at 25-24. Magic, a playoff team from last year at 25-28, and then Hawks, what feels like a perennial play-in team, 23-28, and then the Hornets and Wizards have been rebuilding for some time, and they will continue that process this year. Hornets at 12-36, Wizards at 9-41. In the predicted standings, I have the Heat finishing up pretty well, getting a little bit hot, getting better. I think that, like I said, I think that Jimmy Butler trade makes their team better. I think they gel pretty quickly. Spoelstra's a great coach, and I think they are going to find their way to some wins to finish at 45-37. And ensure that they're not playing the Celtics or the Cavaliers in the first round of the playoffs. I have the Magic going 41-41. For them, it's can they figure out their offense? That was the question last year. It's the question this year. They really didn't do anything spectacular at the trade deadline, so I'm still worried about the offense, but I think they will do enough to get at least into the play-in, but probably the playoffs, finishing at 500. Hawks, I have them threatening with the play-in. Again, if you're in the Eastern Conference, a losing record, you're still threatening for a play-in game, and it's usually that way for the West. I mean, you have to finish 10th to make the play-in, and there's 16 teams in a conference, so when over half a conference makes it, you can have some losing records in there, and I think that's very common in the East. I think that the East has a much larger gap between the top and the bottom, but Hawks could threaten for it, and I think they do. Still don't think they're that good. Even if they make it to the play-in and make it to the playoffs, they're not going to do anything. Honestly, for the Hawks, you probably want to be in the lottery and try and get a good pick. Then the Hornets and Wizards are going to, I have going to the draft lottery, picking up top 5 odds at the number 1 pick, which is probably exactly what they both envisioned coming into the season. And the Wizards, they can't be the worst team in NBA history. They already have too many wins for that. They already have more wins with 9 wins in 50 games than the infamous Charlotte Bobcats do. So they will not be the worst team in NBA history, but they could still finish as a top 5 worst team in NBA history, potentially even top 3. definitely have set themselves up in the first half of the season and have traded away some of their best players. So that's a storyline to watch if you're the Wizards fans. Moving on to the Atlantic Division, this is definitely a better division, at least at the top. Celtics, a little bit off the pace I had them being at the beginning of the season, but if you're the Celtics at this point, you're the defending champs, right? Like, you know, you have a good team, you have a deep team, a very deep team. You know how to win championships now. You have a star scorer. You have a great number two man, a great Robin, but I feel like it's offensive to call people Robin, or at least people get offended when players get offended when you call them that. Celtics are still an incredibly deep team. They didn't need to make a trade at the trade deadline, in my opinion, and they didn't. I still love their team. I think they're coasting a little bit. In contention for anywhere between a 1 and a 3. I don't think they're going to go below a 3. I don't think they're going to finish above a 1. And really, for them, as long as they're ready come playoff time, that's all that matters. The Knicks looking great with Tibbs. I said at the beginning of the year, you can go back and watch it. I loved the Karl-Anthony Towns trade for them, and it's paid dividends. Towns has been great. Brunson has been great. They have pieces all over the court, and this Knicks team has slowly gotten better. And the rebuild for them, I think, has been interesting. There's been some moves. Everybody's like, why would you make that move? And then there's some moves that are like, that makes sense. And most of them have worked. Most, if not all of them, have worked out pretty darn good for the Knicks. They are in contention for a 1 seed. And again, I don't know if they fall below a 3. Definitely not below a 4 seed. Looking like a good season for the Knicks. And as you can see, the Knicks and Celtics have run away. It's been a tough year for the Sixers. Not the year they envisioned when they got Paul George in the offseason to put with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. A lot of injuries for this team, and I think that's going to continue. Still think they have a chance at the play-in, but if they're playing the Celtics or the Knicks or the Cavaliers, who we'll get to soon, do they really have a chance at winning that series? I don't know. Probably not. So maybe it's just a reset. It needs to be a reset year for the 76ers, and it looks like they're doing some of that with some of the trades they made. They didn't pick up anybody, but they were trading away some bad contracts for some picks and some cash considerations, just trying to free up the salary cap because they do have to win now, especially if their plan is to win with Embiid. Nets and Raptors both rebuilding. Again, Raptors made that curious trade. I don't really think it makes them any better. I still have the Raptors and the Nets fighting tooth and nail not to finish last in the division the rest of the year. I still think these are bottom 8 to 10 teams in the NBA. At least the Nets aren't lying to themselves and making a trade for Brandon Ingram like the Raptors are. The Raptors are too far out of the playoffs unless they have the best second half in the history of the NBA. They can't lose more than like 5 to 10 games out of their 31 games that are left. So maybe the Raptors are all of a sudden really good with Ingram. I don't think so. And the Nets, again, they're another team that's goal coming into the year was probably to continue to rebuild. And now they won't have Ben Simmons anymore. It's officially announced that he is going to be bought out, which will help free up some salary cap space for a team that needs it. Moving on to the Central Division, probably the best division in the Eastern Conference, but that's not saying much with how low the bar is. Cavs are right now have the best record in the East by quite a few games. They should be able to cruise to the 1 seed because they do have a significant lead. But if they fall or stumble a little bit, I think the Knicks and the Celtics will be right there to catch up with them. The Pacers, trying to build on last season, right? They won a playoff series last season, right? They made a little. They showed up last season, led by Tyrese Halliburton. That's a great team. I don't, they have good players, but I don't think they have any like superstar, megastar level players. But you don't need to. Like I said, I think the Pacers are a team where the sum is greater than the parts. But sometimes those are the teams that are the scariest. Let me go back to the Cavs. I don't feel like I gave them enough love because I had them making the playoffs, but just barely. And nobody saw this year coming. They are arguably the biggest surprise of the first half. So let me give them some more loves. This Cavs team, I think, fell back a little bit last year from where it was 2 years ago, and it seems like they're right. They finally made improvement, the improvement everybody thought they would make. And now the Cavaliers are looking quite good. Obviously, I just think they have depth at every position, right? You have Mitchell and Garland. Both of those guys can score. You have somebody like Jared Allen underneath. You have Evan Mobley, who can do literally a little bit of everything and is a top 4 defensive player in the NBA right now. You make you make a trade or two to help your immediate roster get better, and the Cavaliers are looking really good. All of a sudden, they got better. They have a lot of younger pieces. The Cavs, it was rough when LeBron first left, but to me, they have put on a masterclass of how to rebuild. And that includes making a somewhat questionable move. At the time, it has been proven not to be questionable anymore, of picking up Donovan Mitchell. So Cavs could be a threat. I do worry that their playoff inexperience could hurt them. But we'll talk about that when we get there. Pacers, already talked about. Bucks, a team that started slow but is starting to rebound. They rebounded, not starting to, they have rebounded after a rough start. My main concern with the Bucks is they have like the toughest schedule to end the year. Otherwise, I think they could make a push for 50 wins, and I still have them getting to 47. I think the Bucks and the Pacers are going to be within 2 games of each other the rest of the season, fighting. And I think both of these teams are fighting for the 4, 5, 6 region. Right, both of the Bucks and the Pacers both want to be that 4 or 5 seed, so they don't have to see the top 3 teams in the East in the first round. The Bucks team, led by Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, you know what they're going to do. They're going to show up. Dame has rebounded a little bit this year from his rough first year in Milwaukee, averaging 27 points per game. He's been in the 7 assists per game area the entire year. Giannis averaging over 30, averaging a double-double like he normally does. Those two are still good together. You know that's where all the scoring, all of the playmaking is coming from for the most part. They still have Brook Lopez, right? Who in some ways is a 3-and-D 7-footer. Welcome to today's NBA. We'll see what Kyle Kuzma does. I still think the Bucks are missing an elite perimeter defender. They did get a backup center that should help in the minutes Lopez isn't on, and Bobby Portis is always a good piece off the bench. I'm still worried. Damian Lillard is a great player, definitely better offensively than Jrue Holiday, and gives things that gives you looks that very few players in the NBA can, but he's not the defensive caliber as Jrue Holiday. And when Chris Middleton was struggling with injuries, who was a good defensive player, it really put the Bucks in a tough spot, and is still putting there. Still worried about their perimeter defense, but I think the Bucks have enough offensively and have enough in the paint where they're going to continue to win games, and they have the experience as they have a title recently. Pistons, almost 500. I think they surprised some people, led by Cade Cunningham taking another step up this season, and they have a plethora of young guys that they're just getting time for, and those guys are getting better and better the more minutes they get. I think they slow down a little bit. I don't think they finish 500 or close to it. I still think they have a very legitimate and very real chance to make the play-in, and that's exciting for everybody in Detroit. I think this is the first time in a long time Detroit basketball has something to be excited about, even if it is just a play-in. Chicago, I think that they are going to escape this purgatory they're in of never being good enough of being too good to get a top 5 pick, but not being good enough to really do anything in the playoffs. And I say that it is because I think letting go of DeRozan and trading LaVine is showing that they know where they are as a team, and they just need a rebuild, even though they still have guys like Vucevic, and they just re-signed Lonzo Ball, and they still have Kobe White, who's a great piece. I think the Bulls recognize they need some form of a rebuild, and I think that started with the trade deadline, and I think they are going to continue to do that. They're not going to win too much more the rest of the season. They're going to try and get as the best odds they can in the lottery and continue the rebuild in the offseason. Moving over to the West and the Pacific, the best division in the entire NBA. You're going to see a lot of records that are very similar in the Western Conference throughout these divisions. That shows you how close the race is. I feel like the race is always insane. Well, you'll have where the last couple of years teams like 5 or 6 through 10, 11, 12 are separated by like 3 games with a week to 2 weeks left. It looks like it's heading that way this year. As you can see, there's 4 teams within 3 games of each other just in this division alone. I think the Lakers will continue to separate themselves. I've talked a lot about them with the trade deadline and what happened, so I'm not going to dwell on them too much. The Clippers are led by some guys having a career resurgence in some senses. We'll talk about one of them later. Clippers are looking good. I still think eventually Kawhi Leonard gives them something, especially if they make the playoffs. The Suns have a lot of talent to be at 500. I said at the beginning of the season, I really didn't think. I thought they would be doing a little bit better than this, but I still didn't think they were real contenders because I didn't think that the guys they had on the roster were going to mesh in a way that made sense. They shipped off Yusuf Nurkic at the trade deadline. Not an important piece. It's still notable. The Suns flirted with trading Kevin Durant. Anytime you're thinking about trading Kevin Durant, that says a lot about where you are. They still have Beal and Booker. And again, I just don't think the pieces fit together the right way. Just because you have a whole bunch of star players doesn't mean you're good. The pieces still have to fit, and you have to have the guys around them. The Suns are still going to be good enough to make the playoffs, and I think the Suns still make a little bit of a run. But they're not a serious contender to me, at least not yet. The Kings I talked about with the trade deadline stuff, I just don't see them being able to mount enough of a comeback in the standings, and I don't see them gelling fast enough as a team to be a serious contender. I still think they can sneak into the playoffs. I'm just a little bit worried about fit with some of the pieces, and I'm still a little bit worried about losing somebody as important as Fox, even if you are getting a Zach LaVine back. I think the Kings have a lot to figure out. I still think they could. And if they figure it out, best case scenario is they make a run up the standings, right? Like that's still very possible. I personally just don't see it happening. Next year, I think I'd be much more worried about the Kings. And the Warriors, we'll see if they get better. I mean, it's hard to say they didn't just because they got Jimmy Butler. Anytime we're getting and I think Jimmy Butler makes sense. He's definitely going to continue to add toughness. He's going to add perimeter defense. Do the Warriors need shooting? Maybe, maybe not. They still have Steph and Draymond, right? I mean, Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green together sounds incredibly menacing to me. And I think the Warriors, with all of those veterans and a proven head coach, I think they figure it out faster than a team like the Kings do. And that's why I have the Warriors passing and finishing ahead of the Kings. I also think Steph Curry is going to return to the average a little bit. I think his shooting and his scoring, not bad, below what he expects of himself. And I think he's going to return to the average a little bit in those departments. The Southwest Division. This is another pretty good division outside the Pelicans. The Grizzlies, up and down, I guess, right? Riding on the roller coaster. Maybe part of that's because of Ja Morant's situation over the last couple of years. But he's back. The Grizzlies are back. Coach Taylor Jenkins has this team playing really well. They have two incredible rookies on the roster, plus Jaren Jackson having a resurgent season. And the Grizzlies have one of the best records in the NBA, and I expect it to keep up. They're gritty. You have to be gritty to play in Memphis. I don't think they have any glaring weaknesses. I think they're well balanced. They have paint presence. They have rebounding. They have perimeter play. They have shooting. I think they have all the pieces and I think that continues the rest of the season. And I think that they could maybe be in contention for the 1 seed. Although, as we're going to see on the next slide, there is a team that is running away with it, but they're definitely a top 3 seed in the West with the potential to make a run, if not to the NBA Finals, definitely the conference finals. The Rockets, another surprising team, especially because some of the people who are leading this 32-19 season shows how much I know. I said the Rockets were a 500 team this year, that they're 1 year away from competing, that they had a lot of really good young pieces that are getting better the more and more they play. They have a lot of young pieces that are going to continue to get better the more that they play. I said at the beginning of the year, I didn't see it happening this year. I saw it happening next year. Well, if we're taking my opinion, the Rockets are 1 year early. They seem like they have arrived this year, and they're only going to get better and better. There's too many guys to name. Obviously, the first one that pops up in my head, most improved player candidate. He's improved offensively and defensively, doing a lot of incredible things, and maybe not getting the love of some other players. Amen Thompson has played incredible and is really heating up down the stretch here. You know that they have some of the scores. I mean, they drafted in the lottery, right? Like they top 10. They got Reed Shepard, a guy a lot of teams wanted, somebody that's supposed to come and score, and he's like barely playing. Been to the G League this season, so it's like why is one of the guy who is supposed to be one of their main guys, one of their main young guys to help rebuild this team is really it isn't even playing for them, and they still have this that tells you how this resurgence that tells you how deep the Rockets are. Very impressive what they're doing. The Mavericks, I think they can still make the playoffs. I still think they can be a little bit dangerous. They have a lot of vets, right? You're going to need a lot to go with your vets. But again, Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis, that's still a pretty good tandem, even if it is older. You're going to need help from some of those ancillary pieces. And sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. I don't think the Mavericks are as good as they are, but I don't think they're bad by any stretch of the imagination. And I still think they finish third place here. The Spurs, like the De'Aaron Fox trade, Stephon Castle, one of the Rookie of the Year contenders, Victor Wembanyama. I mean, we all know who Victor Wembanyama is. First All-Star appearance for a reason this season. This team is really good, and I think they make a run into play-in. I think they're going to fall a little bit short just because the West is loaded. If the Spurs were in the East, I'd be saying they have a chance to be a top 6 seed and miss the play-in altogether, I think. But the Spurs, they're good this season. They're going to. I think they could be really good next year, especially after if they don't make the playoffs, like I think, and they add a lottery pick. They have the backcourt. They have Wembanyama in the front court, and it's just about maturing and coming together as a group. And they still have a good head coach, even if he is in and out of the lineup. I hope that Greg Popovich can continue to be healthy and get healthy and stay healthy. And the Pelicans, they were looking to be a play-in team of a bottom half playoff team coming into the year like they have been the last couple of years. And it's kind of just all fallen apart. I think they have a lot of pieces that they haven't traded yet that might be traded in the offseason just to free up salary cap space. They have to figure out what to do with Zion Williamson. With him, he's supposed to be your star player, your franchise player, and he's not playing a whole lot. And it's been a theme throughout his whole career. And when he does play, he plays well. So Pelicans have some things to figure out. I think that it might be rebuild time for them, or at least retool and restructure time for them. They're not going to do much. They're looking at top 5 draft number 1 pick odds in the draft lottery as well. Moving on to the last division, the Northwest Division. I mentioned a team running away with the 1 seed in the West, and you're looking at them, the Thunder. They've done it most of the year without Chet Holmgren. Chet Holmgren is back today. Today is Friday, the 7th of February when I'm recording this. So that's one of their better players, right? That's the reason why I mentioned that is because it's like they didn't make any significant trades at the trade deadline, and they're still getting better because they're getting one of their best players back. Chet Holmgren, if he can stay healthy, is going to be massive for the team down the stretch. You have an MVP candidate in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You have Jalen Williams. You have the Thunder have put on a masterclass in how to rebuild. Not only are they drafting well, not only did they get somebody like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that has helped them significantly expedited the process, but they're hitting on they're hitting on a lot of picks. They're developing a lot of their picks well, and now all of a sudden they're in. They still have a whole bunch of first and second round draft picks and one of the best, if not the best team in the NBA. The Thunder have done it, and Sam Presti have done an excellent job of rebuilding. They made the playoffs last year after finishing with it after an incredible regular season, and they seemed like they weren't ready for that intensity. Maybe that experience last year has them ready for this year. The Thunder, watch out. They're another team with that, in my opinion, doesn't have any glaring weaknesses. It's hard to have a perfect team. No team is perfect. But when you don't have a glaring weakness that's just sticking out that everybody can exploit, it's helpful. And I don't think the Thunder do. I think it's more about matchups in the playoffs for them. The Nuggets, I mean, it's the same old Nuggets, right? You still have the same core with Jokic, Murray, and Porter. It's still about the supporting cast, and it's the same old Nuggets in the sense they're one of the best offensive teams in the history of the NBA when Jokic is on the floor, and they're one of the worst when he's off the floor, right? It's like, how many minutes can Jokic play? They're the same Nuggets. They are looking like they're going to a top 4 seed with their record. Still a really, really good Nuggets team. They have playoff experience. They've been one of the most consistent teams in that respect of the last 5 years. They all now have championship, not all of them, but a lot of them have championship rings. I don't expect to see the Nuggets to slow down. Do they have enough firepower to beat a team like the Thunder? That's to be determined. Timberwolves, led by Anthony Edwards, without Karl-Anthony Towns, and it seems like they're right around where I thought they would be around. Not quite as good as last year record-wise, but I think maybe the team is figuring out who they are now that they don't have to choose between two centers. That could be helping them with identity. And Anthony Edwards gets better every single season he plays. Honestly, I think the Timberwolves aren't being talked about enough by the national media. And, maybe it's because they have a good record, but it's not great. They're third in their division, right? There's two teams alone right there that have a better record than them, but they're still playing really well. They lost an incredibly good player in the offseason, and Anthony Edwards still has this team playing well. It's not just him, right? They Gobert, McDaniels, they got guys everywhere. Can't name them all, but Timberwolves still looking good. I don't think anybody wants to see them in the playoffs, but I still doubt that they can hang with the top teams over the course of 7 games. But I think the Timberwolves are still building something special, and I think Anthony Edwards eventually is going to be one of the guys in the NBA. You want to talk about hot teams, right? The Lakers have been incredibly hot recently. There's been a team that didn't do anything at the trade deadline. The Portland Trailblazers, I said coming into the year, I think they're not going to have a winning record, but they're going to have a better record than a lot of people, I think, were expecting them to. That's definitely been true. They've won 10 out of their last 11 games, and they're currently on a 5-game winning streak. They're playing really, really well. And you want to talk about pieces for the future. They have them all over the court. They have some vets. They have some young guys. And Chauncey Billups looks like he has them playing well. They've been the best defensive team in the NBA over this hot streak. They've been one of the better defensive teams in the NBA the entire season. What's changed for them to get them on this hot streak? It's been the offense figuring it out. They made a trade for Denny Avdija with the Wizards over the offseason, and I didn't know what to think about it. Avdija has been one of their best players. He has a hot streak, right? I would argue Avdija is having a career year for the Blazers. Then you have Simons, who is started off slow to start the season and has really rebounded and playing well as of late. You have Scoot Henderson, the number 3 overall pick from 2 years ago. Everybody wanted to write off. He's is having the best stretch of basketball in his career. And what really sucks for Scoot Henderson is the Blazers have such a log jam at guard. He's not getting as much playing time as he probably deserves because there's so many guards on that team. And I think the more minutes he gets, the better and better he gets, but he's showing signs of being the franchise player he was drafted to be. Shaedon Sharpe, remember him? He's playing incredible. He's showing his athleticism, arguably the most athletic player in the league when it comes to dunking. And now that 3-point shot is here, and it looks like it's here to stay. They have Donovan Clingan showing great paint dominance. But guess what? He's not even getting the bulk of the minutes at center because DeAndre Ayton is. Even somebody like Toumani Camara. The Blazers have people all over the place. If 2 of their better players aren't playing, they have 2 guys to sub them in with. The Blazers team, maybe not dangerous this year, but next year, especially if they have as many guys as they do now, they could be really dangerous, and a lot of them are super young and could be in Portland for a long time. Keep an eye out on the Blazers. The Jazz, another one of those rebuilding teams trying to get the best pick as possible to get Cooper Flagg, get the best percentage chance possible getting Cooper Flagg. I didn't expect the Jazz to quite bottom out like this. I thought they'd still be better than the Blazers. Didn't expect them to be playoff caliber, but I didn't expect them to be this bad. They are bad. I think that they maybe should just blow it up. That's never, it's never fun, but it's not always the worst thing to do either. And I think the Jazz are going to do that the rest of the season. Okay, now that I've talked about all the teams, where the current sittings are, how I see them ending, let's get into what the playoffs would look like. Remember, if you are in purple, you clinch playoffs. If you are in red, you're in the play-in. And if you are in black, you are in the draft lottery. So here would be my projected standings in order and based off of where I have them finishing, as you saw in the previous slides. And why I say final playoff teams is because this is how I see the play-in shaping up, which would be the 76ers beating the Magic and getting the 7 seed, and then the Magic beating whoever the winner of the Hawks and Pistons are to be the 8 seed. this is what our final 18 playoff would look like. And obviously the Wizards and Hornets are both bad, and I see them both with being a bottom 5 team with great lottery odds. And the Western Conference, same rules apply. It's the same thing. How do I see it the play-in shaking out? I see the Clippers beating the Rockets, and I so badly wanted to put the Mavericks. I actually had the Mavericks penciled in there, and then I thought about it, and I picked the Warriors. I just think Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler are not going to let this team not make the playoffs. They're both in their 30s. They're playing for championships, right? But a playing game, and not just a playing game, it's a win or go home one game between the Mavericks and Warriors. That shows you how deep the West is. That would be pure cinema and an electric one game atmosphere. Honestly, it might come down to who the home team is. But I really like the Mavericks, and honestly, out of the 4 teams in the play-in, I think the Rockets are going to finish the worst. But I don't know. I'm going to pick the Warriors, but I'm like 50.1% on the Warriors and 49.9% on the Mavericks. Assuming that all happens, this is where I see my final playoff teams. And then again, Jazz and Pelicans, both bottom of the barrel teams looking for the number 1 pick. So this is what the playoff bracket would be at. On both sides, it's numbered as from top to bottom, and I'm about to read out top to bottom. 1, 8, 4, 5, 6, 3, 7, 2. That's how it is on both sides from top to bottom. Let's look in the East. Cavaliers, Magic. 1 seed, 8 seed, not a lot to say, right? Cavaliers have been the better team all year. They can play defense and they can score. The Magic play good defense for the most part. They can't score. Cavaliers. Pacers, Bucks. I think this would be a great series, 6-7 games, and I think it'd be a lot of high-scoring games. I wouldn't see a lot of defense being played there. I think the Bucks are a little bit more experienced, and I think I actually like the Bucks to win that. Knicks, Heat. I think the Heat are a much better Heat team, and there's a probability that I move the Heat farther up in the standings as the season goes on. I want to see how the new look Heat play when they get established and everybody gets to Miami and they're playing. But this is going to be a tough, gritty series between 2 of the grittiest teams in the NBA and the Heat and the Knicks. And I like the Heat to get at least 1, but the Knicks are going to win this one. At least that's how I see it right now. And the Knicks have been a top 3 team in the East and a top 5 or 6 team in the NBA all season. I don't see it changing in the playoffs, and they pick up a win. 76er Celtics. I mean, the Sixers, maybe you're scared to play them if Paul George and Embiid and really most of their roster's healthy, but I still don't think the Celtics will be too scared. They've been able to handle the 76ers pretty well the last couple of seasons. And just the Sixers, I don't think are really trying that hard. I think they're going to, if anything, they're backing in to the play-in and the playoffs. Celtics are going to be looking for a repeat. Not going to be a problem for them. I still love the Bucks, guys. I loved them at the beginning of the year. If you listen to that episode, you know, and I just can't shake them. I have the Bucks beating the Cavs in 7 games. Seems improbable, I know. The Cavaliers are deeper and have less holes, but I think Giannis is going to be the best player on the court. And I would argue Damian Lillard, at least offensively, might be the second best. I think Damian Lillard is still a little bit better than Donovan Mitchell. And I think that will be enough to eke the Bucks past the Cavaliers. And then I think the Knicks and the Celtics, the 2 top, well, the Cavs are the top team, but I think, like, in terms of who I trust the most in the playoffs, it's the Knicks and the Celtics. And I have the Celtics winning a tough fought series against the Knicks. The Knicks are going to give them everything they can handle, but not quite beat them. This is a 6 or 7 game series that I think the Celtics win. And then I think the Celtics handle the Bucks in 5 or 6 games. The Bucks just don't have the firepower to compete with the Celtics the way they're built. And I don't like the matchups all over the floor, really, for the Bucks. So, have the Celtics reaching the NBA Finals yet again in back-to-back seasons. In the West, Thunder versus Warriors. Warriors sneak into the playoffs in a sense. They do not have the firepower to match up with the Thunder. I know they got the old man vet strength, but the Thunder are new school. They can score a lot of points. They play defense, and again, they're so deep all over the court. Thunder better prepared for the playoffs this year. they beat the Warriors. Thunder and Timberwolves. It's been such a great playoff series, and even though the Timberwolves look a little bit different, I think this is another great playoff series going 7 games. But it's 7 games, and this time the Nuggets come out on top. Really, just because I think they're a little bit better this year, if nothing else. Suns and Lakers. The more I've talked about the Lakers, literally just over this podcast, the more I like their ceiling. And I think the Lakers beat the Suns. I think that although the Suns, you could argue, have more star power, which is crazy when you're playing a team with LeBron James and Luka Doncic. I don't know. I don't see the Suns making a playoff run. Definitely not against the Lakers team. Lakers beat the Suns. Clippers get in through via the play-in, play the Memphis Grizzlies. Although I like some of the things the Clippers do in the season, they're not good enough to beat the Grizzlies 4 out of 7 times. Grizzlies are deeper, more well-rounded. They will beat the Clippers in advance. Thunder Nuggets. This is I think a 6-game series. Nuggets take a couple on the back of Nikola Jokic, but the non-Nikola Jokic minutes are really bad, and I don't think the Nuggets are going to be able to overcome them consistently enough to beat a team as good as the Thunder. I think the Thunder are just deeper, better prepared, and again, not scared of the playoffs this season. Not that they were scared, but you know what I mean. Thunder beat the Nuggets. I think this Grizzlies-Lakers series could come down to 7. I think the Grizzlies are a deeper team, but I think nobody on the Grizzlies matches the star power of LeBron James or Luka Doncic. The Lakers have the 2 best players in the series. So it's really depth against star power, and I think the Lakers' star power prevails through. A little bit worried about the Lakers in the paint in that series, but Mark Williams will help with that. Lakers pick up the win. And then in a 7-game series, hard fought. And really, I really want to put the Lakers there. In fact, right now, thinking about it, I almost want to switch just because of experience. This is the year that right now I have the Thunder. Again, I think it's going to come right down to the wire. Either one of these teams could win this series. But I'll stick with the Thunder since that's what I have, even though I really want to pick the Lakers. The Lakers Celtics, that would be a great finals matchup. Haven't seen that in a long time. The 2 greatest franchises in the league with, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown versus LeBron James and Luka Doncic. But I think the Thunder get the job done with their depth. They have a little bit more star power than the Grizzlies, in my opinion, and they have a lot of depth. And because of that, I think the Thunder squeak by the Lakers with the thinnest of margins. And then the Celtics Thunder. The Celtics go back-to-back, secure championship 19, and extend their lead over the Lakers. Thunder, both of these teams are really deep, but I think the Celtics have been there before. They know it. They know what they have to do. I trust Tatum and Brown a little bit more than the Thunder, whoever you want to say, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and whoever you want to say their number 2 is, I guess, Jalen Williams. And again, both of these teams are deep. I trust the Celtics a little bit more than the Thunder, but the Thunder if they don't get it this year 25-26 could be their year. They could be building for that. Moving on, my current power rankings and my award races. I did a top 15, and because I wanted to reflect not only other teams at the top, but there's some teams at the bottom that I think are hot right now, like the Blazers. I think the Warriors are heating up. I arguably am disrespecting the Lakers at 6. I acknowledge that they're hot and they just picked up Luka Doncic, so you could argue that they're top 4, top 3 as it sits. But I have a lot of good teams at the front. There's a lot of good teams at the top. So yeah, I don't need to read it to you. You guys can look and see. But Thunder topping it right now with the Cavs, and those teams have been pacing the rest of the league all season. The award races at the trade deadline. Here's how I see it. Go through them real quick. Defensive Player of the Year, Wembanyama first, Jaren Jackson Jr. for the Grizzlies second. I think Wembanyama's starting to separate himself. He's obviously fantastic at blocking shots, a great rebounder, and doesn't get enough credit for the steals. He's not afraid to switch on the guards and play defense on guards. Rookie of the Year, Stephon Castle, making a hard charge as of late. Great scorer. And part of the reason why I would say the Spurs are looking as good as they are. Part of the reason why you go out and get Fox to try and make a run. Castle is developing nicely, and then Edey, he's been a little bit more he's been a little bit streaky. This I don't think this race is over. I think Edey could catch Castle. I think there's some players in third or fourth maybe that could catch either of these guys. Rookie of the Year race is definitely a close, interesting one. But look at this, Spurs picking up defense. I have the Spurs getting Defensive Player of the Year and Rookie of the Year. You want to talk about being set up for the future? There you go. Most improved player. This one's that is probably going to draw the ire of a lot of people. I know Cade Cunningham, right? Evan Mobley. There's a lot of players mentioned here, but to me, the Spirit of the Award, most improved player, is somebody making a large jump. Those guys are all making jumps. Cunningham, right, jumping up into a star player. Numbers wise, I mean, he's improving across most, if not all, of his categories, but not at the rate somebody like Norman Powell. And maybe if there was a comeback player of the year, Norman Powell would win it. But he has had a very interesting career, and this season he is a large reason why the Clippers are still in the playoffs and competitive. He's resurrected his career this season, seemingly out of nowhere. His numbers have jumped way up. And I just, in the spirit of the award, I don't think guy like lottery picks who are showing that small progress. Well, yeah, if you look at year 1 to year 4 or 5, that's a really big jump that maybe could win it. But like and you shouldn't win the award because somebody's like, oh, you're really improved year after year, and now look where you started and look where you are now. Norman Powell has had, statistically and just watching, I think the biggest jump in performance for any player this season, and that's what I think the award should be about. That's why I have Norman Powell first, and why I have Amen Thompson second, because I think those are the two guys that have made the biggest jumps as individuals, both statistically and on court, watching NBA games, in my opinion, this season. Sixth man of the year, I think right now it's Peyton Pritchard's award to lose for the Celtics. I don't think there's anybody that close to him. I think it's no race is over quite yet, but that one is probably the closest one to being over. Then I have Naz Reid in second. I don't want to hear it from anybody who thinks somebody else should be mentioned when they just got traded. And if you don't know who that is, don't worry about it, because Naz Reid should finish second. Coach of the Year, I don't think it's close, right? Like Taylor Jenkins for the Grizzlies clearly deserves to win. No, maybe people saw the Grizzlies to rebound, to come back to where they had been, but nobody saw them being this good. And he has 2 rookies that are going to be top 5, top 6 in Rookie of the Year voting as it currently sits. What a recovery by the Grizzlies. They're one of the top teams. Taylor Jenkins deserves a lot of praise for his coaching job. And then I think Thibodeau is the bridesmaid once again, doing a great job with this Knicks team. I think it was a little bit more people saw this coming. But, Thibodeau is a great coach and sometimes doesn't get the love he deserves because he plays stars a lot. Then my NBA third team, Donovan Mitchell, Steph Curry, Cade Cunningham, Victor Wembanyama, Karl-Anthony Towns. And you know what? I'm using stats. I'm using team performance. I'm using what I've seen them do when I watch them play, because I've watched everybody play multiple times this season. I'm not going to sit here. This is a tight race. I tried to do 2 guards and 2 backcourt and 3 front court for all of these. Third team, I had to switch it up because I couldn't find a forward that I could justify putting in front of any of the 3 backcourt guys that I have here. Cunningham deserves his first All-NBA team, just as Victor Wembanyama does. And I think as long as Curry is putting up enough points per game, nobody's ever going to take him off their All-NBA team list. So that's why he's there. Brunson and Lillard I have as my 2 guards. There's a lot of good guards in this league. I think Lillard has rebounded this year, and Brunson has firmly put himself amongst the top guards in the league. LeBron, he's having a great year. You can never leave him out. Tatum is Jason Tatum, and then Anthony Davis, I think, finishes up the season strong enough to be second team. Then my NBA first team, SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Anthony Edwards, he's having an incredible season for a guard, and I hope he gets the appreciation he deserves. One of the leading, he's scoring a lot more than I think people realize, and I think without Anthony Edwards, the post Karl-Anthony Towns era in Minnesota would be going much worse. Anthony Edwards deserves the appreciation this year as a backcourt player, and I hope he gets it. Giannis, Durant, and Jokic need a little bit less explaining, I think. Same thing with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. MVP, I think Jokic deserves it the most this year. I think he could pick up number 3, and Giannis is second. 2 international players that we've seen top 5 in the MVP voting. 2 guys that have both won 2, very deserving. Both guys, I would argue, are the 2 most important players, and then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is right there with them. I think if your MVP is going to anybody that's not one of those 3 guys, you're not giving it to the right person. Those should be top 3 in everybody's books. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I believe this is now going to be the longest episode of the podcast in its history. I appreciate you guys spending time listening to it. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know if you want more NBA content. Let me know if you want more content from any individual sport. It seems like a lot of people were enjoying the NHL video from last week, as it is the most viewed and most commented on. Please like, comment, and subscribe. That's the biggest thing you can do to help me as a creator, and I like to hear from you guys. I want to hear what you guys think, so please put in the comments what your hot takes for the rest of the NBA season and anything that you guys think. Again, thank you for always spending time to come out and listen. I hope you guys enjoy. Watch the rest of the NBA season. It ought to be exciting. A lot of new names and a lot of new faces. And once again, peace.